Welcome to The Digital Boss. My name is Andrea. I'm your host, and I am very, very excited for today's interview because today we're going to talk about knowing thyself and crafting an authentic personal brand that really is true to you. The reason I'm putting this out there is because I've noticed throughout all the workshops that are available, they give you the business tactics. They show you how to run a Facebook ads and how to manage YouTube, which all will also be included within the summit. But I think it's so fundamental to craft a vision that is authentic to you. And if you ask any big time entrepreneur, they will say the same thing. So today I have a very, very special guest, Karin Bellnatoni, here with us. She's an executive coach. And she's an entrepreneur. She's actually owned a marketing agency of herself. So Karin, welcome to The Digital Boss.
Hi, Andrea. So good to be here with you.
Absolutely. I am so happy to have Karin on. So Karin, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, a little bit is hard.
I love that.
So I call myself an executive coach and a growth strategist. And it's interesting because this has to do with branding, right? I don't really feel like a coach because I'm a bit more interactive, more like a personal consultant, but I hired people who are really good at branding, and they told me that people are searching on executive coach when they're looking for me. And so I kind of had to modify what I thought about myself, right? So in order for people to find me, the term executive coach relates to what people are thinking and searching on. However, in my experience of executive coaching, executive coaches are very powerful questioners, and they lead you through a path of self-discovery. And I feel it's my experience of myself that I'm more interactive and more consultative, if that makes sense. My program's called the 180, so I help people go from here to there. In times of great change, when you get stuck and you want to make a great big change in your life, like leaping into being a digital boss, you have to start with changing the relationship that you have with yourself. So I spoke to some kids last week at a school, and that's the advice I gave them. You know, if you want to change your life, start with how you treat yourself, how you speak to yourself, how you feel about yourself, what you share about yourself. And I think all those things are relative to today's conversation. So I did build a very early digital marketing agency that I sold in 2002. One of the ways I feel we were successful was because I not only built my IP and my special offerings and benefits were very unique at the time, but we also spent a lot of time building the human capital at the company. So it was really important to me that people who worked for me were expanding their minds and their consciousness while they were in my employ. And I feel like that was a real key to our success. And so that's something I help companies do today. So I work one-to-one with entrepreneurs, and I work with teams at companies.
Which is exactly why I wanted to reach out, because I know our audience is going to absolutely love you. Karin works with business owners and entrepreneurs, like she said, you know, to really get them from here to there and help them make huge leaps in their businesses and in their lives. So if that resonates with you, it definitely resonates with me. Keep on watching this video because we're going to dive deep into ways that you can craft an amazing project that really resonates with who you are. So Karin, why is it important in your years of experience? Why is it important to know thyself? And why is this one of the first things that you bring up with your clients essentially and with everyone that you meet?
So, you know, in any strategic planning process, which really is the underlying infrastructure of getting yourself online or getting yourself into an offline marketing program, you know, you start with where are we today, right? If you don't know where you're at, if you want to drive to Florida, it's important to know whether you're sitting in Virginia or New Jersey, right? And so how can you craft the journey or even vision how far you want to go unless you know where you're at? And this is, the term know thyself is from ancient Greece. And it's really the beginning of all wisdom, according to the ancient. And, it's something I talk to my millennial clients about a lot. If you're going to be in relationship with somebody else, if you don't know who you are, you become what they want. So, from personal experience, I've made that mistake. I didn't know what I wanted, and so I ended up being what somebody else wanted. And so you end up in a relationship where you almost don't even know what happened. And so you don't want that to happen online. It's a very public forum, and you want to be more on purpose and with purpose. Intentional versus by accident. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. And it's essentially the first thing that I tell everyone who comes to me for some help getting launched online. It is absolutely essential in your journey, okay? And not just in your journey, like she mentioned, offline as well. So what are the steps to getting to know yourself?
That's a great question.
Because once you know yourself, and this is why it's important, once you know yourself, you can then craft an authentic personal brand that is essentially what you're going to put out into the world through your content, through your in-person interaction. So this is where we're trying to guide you, okay? It's really important to know yourself. So what are the first steps into actually knowing yourself?
Well, first, I'll share something here. I was very late to the party with Facebook. I felt very uncomfortable. Some of that is generational. Some of that is just who I am as a person. And I remember a point where a friend said to me, you don't really need to like it, but you need to understand it. And, that person wasn't necessarily sharing the way I would like to online, but I really heard those words. And I thought, well, what parts of me would I want to share? And how do I even present today, right? So we know lots of things about ourselves, hopefully, but getting some reflective information is valuable. But I start always with, what do I love? What do I really love about myself? What do I love to talk about and share? What are the things I feel a little less comfortable about and I'm willing to grow? And what are the things that are off limits, right? So just coming up with that list. At the time, I had moved to New York City. I was in Lower Manhattan. The World Trade Center was going up, and I was taking regular photos of it from different angles, 2 or 3 different angles. And I started sharing because I felt like Lower Manhattan was coming back and becoming something different than the financial center of the world. It was a center of hope and opportunity. And I think we've seen that now in the last 5-7 years. But at the time, there were even New Yorkers saying things like, I don't go down there. It's disgusting. It's not a happy place. And so I wanted to kind of show this phoenix rising, which was the World Trade Center growing. And so I quickly decided one of the things I loved that I would like to share were things about Lower Manhattan coming back. So that's sort of an indirect thing. It doesn't have a ton to do with my business, but it has to do with me as a person and something I'm really passionate about. And so I kind of came up with this list of things that if it didn't fit, I wasn't going to post about. Let me just interject another tip about posting. Don't post on wine. Do not, if you have a moment where you're feeling like you want to share something and you're not running it up against this list of things that are part of your brand that you've come up with that are your things you love. And on top of that, you've just come out of a restaurant where you've had a nice meal and a few cocktails. It may not be the best time to post, right? Because we have to take this as seriously as digital bosses as if we were going on stage. and you are going on stage. So I would not go on stage after a big meal and a few glasses of wine. No one should go online after that and consider themselves, sharing their business and their brand in that way, right? I wouldn't come to work and work with my clients in that way either. So I think, sort of just that mindset of taking it super seriously, and then kind of uncovering those I like, I love, I would like to learn more about, I'm not really 100% confident in, and then the things that are just off limits. And so let me say this about transparency. I was a transparent person before it was hip, and transparency doesn't mean naked. It doesn't mean that you need to share everything about yourself. It means that you're being authentic in what you're sharing, and that you're sharing things that are relevant, that make people feel more comfortable, not necessarily things that make people uncomfortable, or things that might make you uncomfortable someday, because this is, the World Wide Web. You're getting on a stage in front of everyone in the world, and you really want to think through how you show up.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people watching this, actually probably everyone, myself included, it's a little nerve-wracking when we're getting started off, because we literally are putting ourselves out in the internet. And I see the two extremes. I see either people who are just paralyzed by fear and they don't post at all, and then I see people who just take it lightly and then they start posting really dumb stuff. And by dumb, let's use my example, like my college years. Oh my goodness, I posted so much crap, Karin, and it cost me a lot to go back and erase all of that, because that's just an image of me that doesn't resonate with the true me. And sometimes you just post because you're feeling it, and you don't even know. When you go back like a few months later, you're like, what the hell is this? Like when you look at it objectively. So, really take this into consideration. However, be as real as possible. Okay, be as real as possible, but by creating a personal brand beforehand, you kind of know the filters. You know what content should be put out. And also, we do have another segment in the summit that's about defining and targeting your audience. Also, by knowing your audience, once you craft your vision, once you later create that target audience, and by understanding your audience, you can also filter out things that really resonate with them. Okay, so I know sometimes it's a little bit exciting to just like post about anything, but take into consideration the message that you want to put out and the people that are receiving it. Okay,
100%.
So
It's not about you.
That's so hard. It's really, really hard to understand, because like when the problem with social media, and this is my own perspective, is that this business is very different than any other business, because this is public, okay? Like sometimes when you own a little brick and mortar, what happens inside those four walls just stays in there. But since everyone has a social media profile, even my little sister, it just becomes this very casual thing of like, this is my profile, so I'm just gonna post whatever. And that's okay, that's valid if you're not trying to be a digital boss and you're not trying to run a business and create an awesome image of yourself. But if you're here watching this, chances are you definitely want to take a hold of your online presence and create a strong impact. So make sure that you make those two differences. The fact that everybody else has a social media profile and they're doing their thing and they're posting about them, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's okay for you to do, okay? But at the end of the day, the decision is yours. You should just go with your gut feeling. But my suggestion is that you definitely craft a personal brand and you take our advice, the advice that you're hearing on this video, and really make everything that you put out have an underlying purpose and a strong intention, okay, that ties in with that personal brand.
Yeah, let me give an example. I see the word honored overused. So, being honored isn't something that should happen to you 5 times a week unless you're Beyonce. Most of us feel excited. We feel energized by getting to speak to a group. Maybe if the UN invited you, you could share that you really felt honored. But I find when we overuse words, they lose meaning, and it causes our audience to lose trust in us. So instead of saying, I'm honored to be invited here to speak to the Chamber of Commerce this morning and posting a photo of yourself, you might want to say, I got to speak to 50 business owners this morning at the Chamber of Commerce, and here are the 1, 2, 3 tips that I gave them that could be helpful to you. Maybe you even want to write a blog and about the experience or what you shared and attach that in the link. That's going to have a lot more power. You know, it's not taking the easy way out to just get a post out, but really thinking about how will this post be valuable to my audience, right? So knowing thyself, step 2, knowing thy audience, I'm sure is another segment you've got. But knowing thyself is the way you know your audience, because your audience, generally speaking, your ideal clients look a lot like you, and they're interested in you because they see something they want or they feel like to have. So that's important to really understand that this is a bridge for you to give them those pieces. When you say, I'm just so honored to speak here, it leaves a disconnect, right? So how do I get to do that? Right? It puts you on a level above or disconnects you from folks, where showing you maybe how, you know, today I got to speak at the Chamber of Commerce. There's another strategy. And it took me 17 calls to the woman who runs it in 8 months. But here I am. And how I did that is I pitched 3 different ideas. And I asked for these questions. And I finally got to speak. And that's a little more vulnerable. You know, that's sharing that I'm just like you. It's hard work for me to get these speaking engagements. So that's a good example, I think.
Yeah. Now, it is a great example when you're crafting your personal brand and you're creating this online presence. That is so important, because you need to be relatable. You need to find the sweet spot between being an authority figure so that people respect what you're saying, but also being relatable and approachable so that people feel like you're one step ahead, but she gets me. She absolutely understands me. And not only that, like, not only is the message good, but the context in which she's delivering it is good too, because I can really fully understand it and grasp it. So I think it's very important that sometimes the same message, like you said, can be just displayed in a different manner. And it makes all the difference, because and you're completely right. And I've been guilty of this too. I'm so honored to be speaking here and there. But really, by giving the backstory of, okay, this is what it took, this is really what it took, and this is how you can do it as well. It creates that bridge and builds that relationship, and it's still authentic to your brand. Okay, so that's great.
I went with a client to the Shark Tank 2 years ago. And, there were some videos we posted that I felt were really authentic, and I'll talk about those instead. And some of that was her without her makeup on, talking about how nervous she was and how freaked out she was about getting to be on TV and share her story, and how she came from here in her life and got to there. And I think people could really resonate with that journey, and her tears of just joy and fear and all of the feelings she was feeling. And so these videos we shot along the way really made people feel like they were right next to her, like I was,
Yeah. So I've actually been practicing that. I decided to start being more vulnerable online since a year and a half ago, and it made all the difference. But the reality is it's scary. But honestly, to be successful online nowadays, it's almost required, because there's so many just plastic profiles, and a lot of profiles that are even fake, that are actually robots, not real profiles. So people have their guard up, in regards to trusting you, you know.
Yes.
But if you can demonstrate you're no,
Openness.
you're human, yeah, and that you're actually human, you know, just like them, and that if you could do it, they can do it as well. That is really where the connection lies. Okay, so by knowing yourself and crafting a brand around that, exactly that raw authentic self, you're going to start attracting the people that you want in your life. And it's going to, like, once you get the wheel rolling, it's going to become an amazing magnet effect, and you're going to start attracting these people rather than just sitting and seeking them out. So I really, really hope, like I said, that everyone takes this into consideration when they're starting their journey, because I know the tendency is to go straight to the Facebook ads or straight to the Instagram training. But this is so, so, so important. This is the foundation to everything else you're going to do. Okay, guys? So, Karin, now that we kind of know ourselves better, right? How can we craft a brand that is authentic to that self?
Okay.
Like, what's like
I have
nice...
to go back one step.
Okay.
Just make a distinction for the audience.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The word vulnerable is used a lot. You used it in a context that many famous authors use. And I just have a personal pet peeve with the word. I like for people to be open and sharing and their true self. And people, I know, feel that about you and me. I get that feedback as well. But the word vulnerable, it triggers me because it actually means open to attack. And so what I really want people to do is, if you know yourself and you know there are pieces of yourself that you don't want to be open. For example, I know there are a lot of people who don't post pictures of their children. There are a lot of people who don't talk about their marital status or their love relationship. There are other people who may have an illness or something they'd like to keep private. So I think just during that process of coming up with the things you want to share, the things you don't want to share, almost having that checklist protects you from being, you know, truly vulnerable, and opens you up to being able to be open. It gives you that safety net, you know. So as far as a personal brand, I take my clients through this process, and I'm glad to share with your audience a template. After the show, I can get that to you so people can download it. And what it is it's called a personal branding survey. And it's very simple. I actually created it in 2012 after the financial crisis, and I went through a lot of personal reinvention and change. And I sent out an email that asked 3 questions, and the questions asked for a 3-word answer. Right, so that's 3 questions, 3 words, that's 9 words. If you get 20 people to answer, right, you've got 180 words. And then you can consolidate the ones that kind of mean the same thing, like aggressive and assertive, or happy and joyful, you know, and into whichever one you prefer. And then you take the words and you put them in a word cloud. And you end up with this very cool, I mean, everybody thinks it's cool. There was one gal who said, "I'm concerned about what people might say." And I said, you know, most people are going to give you their positive impressions. And it's a way for you to kind of visually see, oh, wow, this is the reflection, right? Because I know who I am to me. I know what I like. I know what my positive traits are. I know what I like to share, what I don't like to share. And now writing that down and keeping that in sort of a checklist is going to be my safety net. But how do I look today, right? We want to start with who are we today, and then how can we change, and what do we want to change into? This really gives you a reflection of what the outside world thinks. And I like to send the personal branding survey to people you've worked with. They can be clients, they can be collaborative partners, they can be vendors, they can be former clients, but people who understand you in a work way. And so you get back the kind of the largest words are the words that are the most meaningful, or the way people see you. And so those can sort of become part of your own personal branding and messaging that you use. And you'll also begin to see that the people you attract reflect those words. Now, if there's a word you don't see, and I had a client say, I really love that people think of me as funny, and they think of me as creative, and they think of me as strategic. However, I'd like them to think of me as really smart. And so that became, part of our mission, and our goal of working together was for her to be seen as a little more intellectual, a little more well-read, a little more savvy around smarts. So it gives you sort of a way to say, here's where I am today. What don't I see? Where do I want to use my digital boss authority to extend my brand and to build my brand and to kind of change and widen the perspective of how I'm seen?
So important. So important, because a lot of times when we think about our personal brands, we forget to ask the people around us. Like you said, it is a very reflective process, and they're both important. You need to be honest with yourself, and you also need to see how the rest of the world perceives you. Okay. And if you see that it's lacking correlation, if you see like there are some things that you would like to be perceived as, or even if you're trying to rebrand yourself and reinvent yourself as a person, which I know a lot of us are going through that. A lot of us who are starting this project, it comes along with a personal transition as well, right? So if you are trying to reinvent yourself and add things to your personal brand, this is the time to do it. Think about the things that you want to incorporate to your brand and embrace it. Start learning, start putting that information out there, because like Karin said, you're going to start attracting these people. And in a little bit of time, when you do that survey once again, you're going to see that most likely that word is now part of your brand. Okay. So with a little bit of love and a lot of consciousness, you need to be very aware of who you are, like I said, and of course what other people perceive as well, to really make sure that they go hand in hand. Okay. And that's the way that you create a really, really strong personal brand that makes you feel good. It's not just about like being the most followed on Instagram, or I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. A lot of people seek validation on social media, and unfortunately they gain that validation through an image that is not authentic to themselves. And I've met a lot of influencers at this point, and I can always tell the ones who are authentic and the ones who are not. And let me tell you, it affects your happiness in so many ways. Like the people who are actually, for example, I know this travel influencer who she loves to travel, and travel was nowhere in her career. So she worked and worked and worked. It wasn't part of her brand, that's for sure. She grinded, and now she's a full-time travel influencer, but she loves it. It is so authentic to who she is. She shows other people how they can also become travel influencers and work with brands. And she's happy. She's amazing. She's an amazing person to work with. And then I've met other big time influencers that I can just tell, like, it's just two different people. And so what I want you to do watching this, because you are most likely in the beginning phases of your journey, I want you to cut the crap now. I'm a very raw person, and Karin is as well. So I'm telling you, I want you to cut the crap now and really, really define your brand from the very get-go, because not only is it going to help you grow way faster, way faster, but it's also going to be so fulfilling. And it's going to feel so nice, because you're going to attract your tribe, the tribe that you want. Okay. So Karin, this was amazing. Is there anything else you want to add before we close up the interview?
I agree with you on the validation part. You've got to validate yourself. You've got to work on your confidence, because there are days nobody's going to like your stuff. There's days nobody's going to share it, and it's okay. You just keep moving forward. And I read this quote this morning, and I can't attribute it to anybody. I looked, but I'd love to share it, because I think all this said, I don't want people to be nervous, because the quote is, if you want your story to be magnificent, begin by realizing you are the author, And every day is a new page in your book.
Mm.
So every day you have a new chance to be who you want to be.
That was the perfect cherry on top to this conversation. So what better way to be who you want to be than to take advantage of all of these amazing tools and actually make a business out of it. And it's kind of crazy because I've seen some really weird profiles of really weird little things that people do that used to be not cool, but all of a sudden by crafting a brand around it and putting yourself out there, you start attracting other people that like that same weird little thing, right? And it's beautiful. Like, these are just opportunities that were not available a few years ago. So take advantage, not just to build a business, but to do it around something that you genuinely love. And Karin, I want everyone to get connected with you. So tell us where can we find you, your social media, your website, all that good stuff.
It's all Karin Bellnatoni. So Karin. I'm sure you have it at the bottom.
Yeah, it's going to be in the email. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bellantoni. So on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. And my email is Karen@KarinBellantoni.com. When you kind of brand yourself as your own name, it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. So I will have all of her information linked in the email below. And like she said, she's actually offering us a free template so that you can actually send out your branding survey as well and get started on working on your brand. By the way, if you heard some crazy noises in the background, we're both in New York City. So that's how it is, you know, New York City life. What can we say? I hope that everyone really found the value in this interview. I certainly did. And of course, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, Karin. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for the great conversation.